From rising prices and record-setting floods to a coast-to-coast garbage strike that's now creating health concerns in several cities. Nvidia has a big win, and will Nick Saben be returning to coach football? Speaking of football, is it football or soccer? And why do we call it soccer instead of football? I will tell you that in trivia. It's Wednesday, July 16th. This is the Flyover Podcast. Welcome to the Flyover Podcast, taking you above the noise for an unbiased, high-altitude view of today's headlines with daily coverage that's honest and refreshing. Let's cruise the news and land the facts. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Flyover Podcast. I'm your weekday host, Ayla Brown. We are halfway through the work week, and there's a lot happening in the world today. So buckle up, and let's take off with today's biggest headlines. Inflation is on the rise again, so we're hitting finance a little bit early today. According to new numbers out Tuesday, the Consumer Price Index shows prices climbed 2.7% in June, up from 2.4% in May. That's the second month in a row inflation has ticked upwards. Economists say it's likely due to the early impact of new tariffs, especially on imported goods, as President Trump's trade policies start to ripple through the economy. The market did not love the news. The Dow dropped more than 400 points, and the S&P 500 slipped about 0.4%. Tech stocks, on the other hand, held strong, thanks in part to a 4% gain from Nvidia after the company got approval to resume selling chips to China. That helped push the Nasdaq to a record high. Later on in the show, I will give you more financial news. Next, devastating flash floods tore through parts of the Northeast on Monday night. In Plainfield, New Jersey, for example, 2 people were killed when floodwaters swept their car into Cedar Brook. The storm brought record-setting rainfall to areas of New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, and Virginia. New York City logged 2.64 inches of rain in Central Park alone, making it the wettest July 14th on record. That downpour overwhelmed subway stations and highways, causing major delays and rail disruptions. States of emergency were declared in several areas as water rescues poured in across New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Some towns saw more than 6 inches of rain, and more storms are expected through Thursday. And lastly, the national garbage strike is now hitting cities from coast to coast. The Teamsters union strike against Republic Services, the second largest waste disposal company in the country, has expanded far beyond Boston. About 2,000 workers are now either on strike or refusing to cross picket lines. The result? Trash is piling up in parts of the Mid-Atlantic, the Midwest, and the West Coast, including places like Los Angeles, the Bay Area, and Seattle suburbs, and several landfills in Ohio. In some other areas, overflowing dumpsters and rodents have become a real problem. Local officials are even calling it a public health emergency. The union is pushing for Republic to match the pay and benefits offered by competitors, especially Capital Waste. The company has offered a raise about 43% over 5 years, but refuses to match those competitor wages. A third meeting with a federal mediator was scheduled for Tuesday, but negotiations are still tense, and trash delays are expected to continue. In politics, House Republicans on Tuesday blocked a Democratic push to force the Justice Department to release files related to Jeffrey Epstein. The vote was razor-thin, 211 to 210, with just one Republican siding with Democrats. Supporters of the measure say the public deserves transparency and suggest the documents could reveal connections to high-profile political figures. But most Republicans called it a political stunt, accusing Democrats of weaponizing Epstein's case. Next, Elon Musk's AI company, called XAI, just landed a $200 million contract with the Department of Defense. The deal will bring XAI's chatbot Grok into use across U.S. military and federal agencies. That puts Musk's tech deeper inside the government, just months after Grok faced backlash for controversial responses online. Officials say security safeguards are in place, and similar AI tools from OpenAI and Google are also being tested. And in New York, President Trump is throwing his support behind Andrew Cuomo's comeback. Cuomo lost the Democratic primary for New York City mayor to progressive Zohran Mamdani, but he's now running as an independent, and President Trump says he, quote, has a shot if he runs a strong race. Trump called Mamdani a communist and said he'd rather see Cuomo win despite their political differences. We're brought to you by Teddy's Turmeric Tamer. Is your best four-legged friend slowing down? Stiff joints, arthritis, discomfort, or just not that same tail-wagging energy? At Teddy's Turmeric Tamer, they believe every dog deserves to feel their best. Naturally. Their all-natural remedy is handcrafted with powerful ingredients like turmeric, ginger, mushrooms, and omega-3s to support joint health, reduce inflammation, and improve overall wellness. Inspired by their dog Teddy's own cancer journey, where he beat the odds and enjoyed 3 more joyful years after being given just weeks to live, Teddy's Turmeric Tamer has since helped countless dogs feel better, move easier, and live happier, more active lives. Your pup deserves to feel their best. Visit Teddy'sTurmericTamer.com and use code Flyover for 10% off. Give your pup the gift of health and more wag-worthy days. And by the way, you can find the link in the description below for that 10% off. Here's your podcast extra. Ukrainians are hailing First Lady Melania Trump as a hero after President Trump said she helped persuade him to increase U.S. support for Ukraine. During a press conference, Trump revealed Melania, born in Slovenia, urged him to get tougher on Putin, pointing out the Russian leader's history of broken promises. Ukrainian residents say her Slavic background gives her a unique understanding of the war's stakes, with memes and praise flooding social media. Many Ukrainians credited her with being a steady influence on the president at a pivotal moment in the conflict. Next, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is refusing to release emails between his office and Elon Musk's companies, saying they include content that's, quote, intimate or potentially embarrassing. A local newsroom requested the emails to better understand Musk's growing influence in Texas. Abbott's office cashed the request fee, then asked the state attorney general to block the release. Critics say the whole thing raises red flags about transparency, especially since Musk's companies like SpaceX and Tesla have a big presence in the state. SpaceX is also backing the push to keep those emails private. And if your eyes are always itchy, dry, or irritated, you might be dealing with something you can't even see. Eyelash mites. Yes, according to New York City eye doctor Ashley Brissett, most of us have microscopic parasites living in our lashes called demodex. And when they overgrow, they can cause all kinds of issues like dryness, redness, inflammation, even eyelash loss. They feed on bacteria and debris, especially if you're not great about your eye hygiene or your immune system, maybe be feeling a little run down. Don't worry, there is good news. A daily eyelid wash and a prescription drop called Extimi can help keep them in check and bring some much-needed relief. Ugh, I can't believe there could be little mites in our eyelashes. But anyways, that is your podcast extra roundup. Keep coming back for more exclusive stories that you won't find in the email edition. Coming up is Nick Saben eyeing a comeback. Plus, Twitter's founder has a new wellness app to track your sun intake. It's all coming up. In finance, we've already gone over the big finance news about inflation in today's Takeoff, but here are some more financial headlines. President Trump's push for pro-crypto legislation hit a speed bump Tuesday. Several cryptocurrency bills stalled in the House after 13 Republicans broke ranks and sided with Democrats to block a key procedural vote. The bills were expected to loosen regulations around digital assets, but for now, they are on ice. And in Texas, a federal judge has overturned a Biden administration rule that kept medical debt off credit reports. That means unpaid health care bills could once again affect your credit score. A move consumer advocates warn could hurt millions already struggling with medical expenses. More on that story can be found in today's show notes. In sports, could Nick Saban be making a comeback? That's the buzz after former Alabama quarterback Greg McElroy suggested the legendary coach might return to the sidelines. Saban retired in January after 17 seasons at Alabama, but speculation is already swirling about where he could go next, especially with several big college and NFL programs in flux. Baseball fans in Atlanta got a wild new snack at last night's All-Star game. Truist Park introduced the Bless Your Heart dog, a corn dog coated in hot Cheeto dust and Fruity Pebbles. Yep, you heard that right. It's part of a growing trend of over-the-top stadium foods designed to go viral and maybe even test your digestive limits. And for basketball, good news for San Antonio Spurs fans. Victor Wembanyama has been officially medically cleared to resume basketball activities. The 7'4" center had been sidelined since February with a blood clot issue, but team doctors say he's made a full recovery and can return to training ahead of the NBA season. And the U.S. men's national team is locking in warm-up matches ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. They'll face Ecuador and Australia in October as part of their final prep schedule. Both games are expected to draw big crowds, especially with the World Cup being hosted in the United States next summer. Here's what's new in science and technology. Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey is back with a new wellness app. It's called Sun Day, and it tracks how much sun you're getting, along with vitamin D levels based on things like your location, skin tone, and even the clothes you're wearing. It's designed to help people get just the right amount of sun exposure without overdoing it. If that sounds interesting to you, as it does to me, read more about it in the show notes below. Next, a Brooklyn startup called Monumental Labs is blending robotics with old-school architecture. They're using AI-powered robotic arms to carve stone statues and building facades, and say their next goal is to construct entire buildings from stone using automation. The tech allows for faster, precise sculpting with a traditional aesthetic. And if you shop at Wegmans, checkout lines might soon be a thing of the past. The grocery chain is testing smart shopping carts in 4 upstate New York stores. The carts use AI to scan your items as you shop, track your spending, and let you bag everything in real time so you can skip the checkout altogether. Ooh, raise your hand if you would love that. I would. Still ahead, 2 men in the UK were sentenced to prison for cutting down a tree. But it wasn't just any tree. Details about that are next. Here are a few stories that just didn't quite fit anywhere else, but they're too good to leave out. President Trump is toying with the idea of rebranding soccer in the U.S. During a press event this week, he joked he might issue an executive order to officially call the sport football, like most of the world does. No policy has been filed, but it's already sparked plenty of debate online, and it will be the trivia question later on. And poll question. Next, in a bizarre heist story tied to sports and entertainment, Atlanta police are searching for a suspect who stole 2 suitcases from a parked car on July 8th. According to reports, the bags contained unreleased Beyoncé music, behind-the-scenes tour footage, and possibly future show plans. It's unclear if the material was for her upcoming tour, but the theft is being treated as a high-priority case. And a heads up from across the pond, 2 men in the UK were sentenced to more than 4 years in prison for cutting down the Sycamore Gap tree, an iconic 300-year-old landmark next to Hadrian's Wall. The felling outraged the public and conservationists last fall. Prosecutors say it was a deliberate act of vandalism. Finally, a heartwarming rescue story out of the Southwest. A man hiking in a remote desert came across 2 wild horses stuck neck-deep in hardened mud. With no cell service and no backup, he used just a stick and a rope to dig them out, likely saving their lives. Photos of the rescue have since gone viral, and you can see them in the show notes below. Here's yesterday's poll question and the results. How would you describe your current financial situation? 40% of you voted that you're upper middle class. 32% said you were lower middle class. 9% said struggling. 8% said wealthy. Another 8% said broke but blessed. And 4% said other. Thank you for voting. Here's the poll question for today. Would you support renaming soccer to football in the United States like the rest of the world? You can vote either yes, it's about time, no, soccer is our thing, or I don't care either way. For me, I actually don't care either way. It's not my favorite sport, and I will just leave it at that. But I'm sure you have something to say about it. Vote in the show notes below, and I'll read the answers in tomorrow's show. Speaking of football or soccer, or why does the U.S. call it soccer instead of football? That is today's trivia question. I think it's a great question because I didn't know the answer to this. The U.S. calls it soccer because that's what the British originally called it, short for association football. While Brits later switched to calling it football, Americans stuck with the nickname to avoid confusion with other football sports like American football, for example. See, now you know. I had no idea. I learn something every day when I do this podcast, and I hope you do as well. Thank you so much for listening, watching, sharing, and leaving a review. By the way, I do read all of the comments, and I really appreciate all of your support. Thank you for supporting the Flyover podcast, and I'll be back tomorrow with more headlines. Until then, thanks for flying with us.